Justice versus revenge, exploring the gray areas. What happens when justice doesn't feel like enough? When the emotional pain outweighs the logic of laws, how do we draw the line between justice and revenge? Today, we'll explore the gray areas of morality, using Harry's story as a lens to understand the complex interplay of reason, emotion, and consequences. Today, we'll explore the gray areas of morality, using Harry's story as a lens to understand the complex interplay of reason, emotion, and consequences. Society tells us that justice is paramount, a system built on reason, fairness, and equality under the law. In the pursuit of justice, we often turn to courts, judges, and legal procedures to resolve wrongdoings. But in doing so, we strip away emotion, expecting logic to prevail over personal grievances. Take the courtroom scene in Harry's story. Here, all the components of justice are on display: attorneys presenting calculated arguments, the judge interpreting the law, and the room holding its collective breath, awaiting a verdict. The scene illustrates how the legal system aims for impartiality and fairness. But for Harry, as for many, justice delivered through these means offers no solace. This leaves us with a critical question: does justice, as represented by institutions, account for the emotional weight carried by those seeking it? Or is this system inherently detached from the raw pain felt by victims of wrongdoing? Where justice aims for balance, revenge thrives on imbalance. It's personal, visceral, and fueled by emotion. Revenge is born out of anger, grief, and the instinct to retaliate. It's about reclaiming control and punishing the wrongdoer, not in the name of society, but for yourself. When Harry leaves the courtroom, we see the shift in his emotional arc. The dissatisfaction brewing within him ultimately drives him to take matters into his own hands. Perhaps he feels betrayed by a system that operates with cold rationality, perceiving it as inadequate in addressing the depth of his pain. But what is it about our psyche that makes revenge so appealing? Is it the illusion of closure? The fleeting sense of power regained? Or is it simply an emotional outlet for the anger and helplessness that we believe justice has failed to address? This dichotomy between legal justice and personal vengeance highlights one of the most enduring psychological questions. Can revenge ever truly heal? To understand this conflict better, let's dive into the specifics of Harry's actions. Standing in the courtroom, watching the legal process unfold, Harry is visibly affected. Grief, frustration, and anger seep into every frame. It's clear that despite the proceedings, he feels an emptiness growing within him. The verdict, even if deemed legally fair, doesn't touch the raw wound of his loss. Later, when Harry steps outside the boundaries of the law, we see his emotional journey intensify. His actions, calculated yet fueled by passion, expose the depths of his anguish. Is he seeking justice? Or has he given in entirely to revenge? Perhaps in his mind, the two have become indistinguishable, a dangerous merging of what feels right and what is right. But Harry's choice isn't just about one moment of retaliation. It's about the cost, both to himself and others. Through this case study, we can begin to unpack critical questions. What drives someone to abandon the law and act on their own sense of morality? At the heart of Harry's story lies a moral gray area, where emotion outweighs logic and right becomes subjective. When justice feels clinical and impersonal, revenge becomes an enticing alternative. Here lies the emotional tug-of-war that defines the human experience. But this gray area comes with complications. Revenge may seem satisfying in the moment, but it risks perpetuating cycles of harm and escalating anger. Consider how one act of vengeance might lead to repercussions, turning a single conflict into a spiral of pain. By contrast, justice, for all its emotional detachment, offers stability, a system that prevents chaos and ensures accountability. But it's not perfect. It asks those who have been wronged to trust a process that may never validate the depth of their feelings. So we're stuck with a difficult question. In situations like Harry's, where emotions run high and closure feels impossible, is the pursuit of revenge understandable? Or is it a lapse in judgment, a failure to reconcile emotion with ethics? This is the space where morality becomes murky, inviting reflection and debate. To better understand these gray areas, Let's delve into the psychological reasons behind revenge. At its core, revenge is a way to process trauma. The mind, overwhelmed by grief or betrayal, seeks an outlet for those overwhelming emotions. But there's a catch. Revenge often fails to deliver the emotional closure it promises. Psychology reveals that while the immediate act of vengeance might bring short-term relief, it rarely addresses the underlying pain. Instead, it may leave a lingering sense of emptiness or guilt, as evidenced in Harry's actions. Justice, while clinical, has the advantage of being impartial. It offers the opportunity for healing not by retaliating, but by acknowledging wrongdoing within a larger framework. The question is, can justice alone provide the emotional appeasement we so often crave? We live in a world governed by systems designed to separate reason from emotion. Justice systems aim to maintain fairness and impartiality, even when emotions run high. But is it enough? Harry's story challenges us to think about how far we'd go if we found ourselves in his position. The emotional need for revenge feels primal, but our ethical understanding of society reminds us of its dangers. Without the boundaries provided by justice, emotional actions like those Harry takes can spiral into harm, not just for the wrongdoer, but for everyone involved, including the avenger. So, how do we reconcile our emotions with the structures of morality and ethics? And, if faced with a sense of injustice, do we trust the system or lean into our need for personal retribution? There's no clear answer, but the tension between these conflicting instincts lies at the core of what it means to be human. As we close, let's take a moment to reflect on what Harry's story reveals about us. The push and pull between justice and revenge isn't just about Harry, it's about all of us. It exposes our emotional vulnerabilities, our sense of morality, and our desire to make sense of the harm done to us. If you were in Harry's position, would you trust the legal process, even if it left you feeling hollow? Or would you act on your emotions, knowing the potential cost of doing so? There are no easy answers, but that's the point. Justice and revenge exist in a gray area, and exploring that space helps us better understand ourselves. It forces us to confront hard truths about emotion, morality, and the human condition. Let's hear from you. What do you think about Harry's actions? Do you lean toward justice, revenge, or something in between? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a conversation about these vital questions of psychology, ethics, and humanity. And remember, justice and revenge may exist on opposite ends of the spectrum, but it's in the gray area between them that we discover who we really are.